Brook Van Velden, who once famously claimed that we put too high a value on human life, is leaving Parliament. It was big news a few days ago, and the responses that I've seen have varied from happiness to absolute ecstatic celebration akin to the end of Return of the Jedi when the Empire falls. Now, I, for one, genuinely do hope that Brooke gets to live out her post-Parliament career experiencing the fruits of her labour every day, and feeling how they impacted people. Like her work to an ultimate success to get rid of pay equity. While she initially didn't know the difference between equal pay and equitable pay and needed clarification on the differences, she did spearhead the drive to halt 33 claims in their tracks. Some of these had been in progress for years across sectors like education, healthcare, and social work, making this a retrospective law change, which is really concerning, and something that her own party's Ministry of Regulation says is bad lawmaking. Her higher threshold, though, for future claims make it almost impossible for most of those in the 33 groups that she screwed over to qualify for future consideration. Her work here saved the budget, apparently. But remember that bit while you count up how much it costs to cancel those ferries, then buy in smaller ones, or the cost of tobacco company kickbacks, landlord tax breaks, the road cone emergency phone line, putting through doomed legislation like the Treaty Principles Bill, or agreeing to waste taxpayer dollars on culture war crap like Winston's English language bill, the extra cost that you pay on your water when they scrapped and then had to restart 3 water processes because co-governance scary. They spent millions on unsuccessful boot camps that were told by experts were not going to work, and shock horror they didn't, or the money that they spent to rebrand departments to remove Te Reo Māori. And ask yourself, why did female-dominated roles have to bear the brunt of those decisions with an inability to be paid equitably for the mahi that they do in the future? The estimated cost of future earnings for these groups that were wiped out by her choice? Almost $13 billion. Oh, and it doesn't get mentioned often, but that move also makes us non-compliant with a couple of international treaty agreements that we'd signed, like the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and International Labour Organization Standards. And it undermines our own Human Rights Act, where the Human Rights Commission said that it undermines our Human Rights Act. Then there's her changes to workplaces, because she's Minister of Workplace Relations. They included safe harbours for businesses with approved codes of practice, which makes it harder to hold businesses accountable if there's a unique or unlisted hazard that hurts people. She reduced safety oversights for small businesses by creating new definitions that mean that they only manage critical risks, creating a 2-tier safety system where workers in smaller firms have fewer protections. She directed WorkSafe to focus less on prosecution and more on just giving advice, basically removing them as a deterrent and creating an environment where workplace injury or death risks are higher, since businesses are now only required to focus on critical risks instead of holistic safety approaches. In fact, her letter of expectations and accompanying budget cuts to WorkSafe saw the removal of their dedicated health team, a team whose core focus was the majority of workplace-related deaths, which are linked to occupational diseases like asbestosis and cancers, which is expected to slow progress exponentially on finding ways to reduce those risks. Literally, some of you are going to die, and that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make policy. The survivors of the Pike River mine disaster, the families of them, have also criticised her changes to dilute accountability for directors in charge of day-to-day operations of businesses where accidents and fatalities have occurred, makes it harder to hold high-level leadership accountable if tragedy strikes, and creates a legal grey area for small businesses where the roles of directing and governing are often all done by one person. And landowners are now largely exempt from liability for recreation incidents, but landowners generally have the most control over outdoor hazards like poorly maintained tracks or unmarked hazards, and this can lead to safety concerns for people working in the outdoor sector. She is also responsible, in part, for the stagnation in wage growth that we've seen. Her minimum wage increases are the lowest on record. In fact, she and Robert Muldoon are the only 2 ministers to ever even consider looking at a 0% wage increase. And to be fair, Muldoon did that, but she delivered the lowest increase on record, because inflation as measured through CPI has been higher than the 2% that she's raised these rates. She's making it near impossible for low-wage earners to keep up with the cost of living. It's what's known as a real-world wage cut. But that driver also impacts other businesses. Large-scale employers often use minimum wage increases as a baseline for entry-level employees for their own internal pay increases. Big box retailers like JB Hi-Fi, for example, offer minimum wage plus a dollar value extra as the entry-level pay rate, which adapts when minimum wage goes up. Van Velden's choice here creates a flattening of wage growth while costs skyrocket, and the coalition re-indexed benefits to wage growth instead of inflation, so benefit increases are impacted by this decision directly as well. Her introduction this year on holiday reforms aimed a calculation tool that included bonuses and commissions into holiday pay calculations, meaning someone who's working on commission and doing really well in that role suddenly gets a massive income drop if they take leave, instead of a consistent income that they should expect. Her expansion of 90-day trials has, according to Treasury research, done nothing to increase the number of people hired. There's no increase in vulnerable groups being hired, and there's no economic upside without removing a worker's right to protest unjustified dismissal. It has, however, created an increase in people unable to secure loans or rentals because a 90-day trial is not considered stable by banks and landlords. She introduced the gateway test to make it harder for contractors to challenge their status and be recognised as employees, limiting some workers' ability to access basic employment rights like sick leave and unfair dismissal protection just to circumvent a high court ruling for Uber drivers that they didn't like. And she was behind the removal of unjustified dismissal claims for anyone earning over $200,000, which might look like it targets executives, but it also removes good faith obligations for a significant proportion of the professional workforce. She introduced laws that allow the Employment Relations Authority to reduce a worker's compensation of up to 100% if their behaviour contributed to the situation. And how do you judge that? It's a setup that means employers can just make up claims to escape financial penalties. She scrapped the 30-day collective agreement rule, meaning that employers can now offer lower individual starting rates to undercut union power, and she refused to support a bill aimed to end the most extreme versions of worker exploitation and modern slavery. She's refused to increase levies for fire emergency responses, which puts workers and the public at risk. A lot of these workplace safety changes were just introduced to Parliament this year, so we don't know the full impact of them yet. But the timing of here's a bunch of unpopular changes experts tell us are going to harm people physically, emotionally, and economically, and her announced retirement from politics is akin to someone dropping the most rancid fart in an elevator as they get off on the next floor. So yes, I really do hope that Brook has a long and varied career and gets to reap the many, many results of her work in Parliament, because so many others will unfortunately have to do that as well, and it seems only fair that the architect of it all should suffer the same fate. Oh, hey there, podcast listeners. Thanks for checking out today's podcast, whether that's on video or audio. I really appreciate it. And I did finally get around to doing a podcast end tag, which I've been meaning to do for a while instead of just taking you onto the Facebook version. So while you're here, why not hit that subscribe button so that you can get updates coming in directly every time there's a new episode uploaded. Just seems like a really simple way to keep up to date with all of the crazy that's going on. So yeah, give that a shot and I'll talk to you soon.